Welcome everyone, this is Kerjims channel. Now we are back to our new episodes of two semi-reality champions and comparison featured by Wild League of Legends versus the Mobile Legend Bang Bang. But before that, please like and subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click the bell icon so you will be notified to our new next episode video. Let's do this!
She was a spear-chucking poke mage assassin who, at the time, felt terrible to play against. Arguably, she was one of the most broken champions in history, because nothing about this champion was fun to play against. Mid was in line for a rework, and that's exactly what she got. On patch 4.10, everything that was good about her in a solo lane as a poke mage was changed, and eventually, this rework would become the reason she would turn into a jungler. Her kit is definitely healthier now, but it's one of those things that they were never really able to get right. Because of course she's still been played and nerfed a bunch in the jungle role as well. And while Nidalee received her rework on that patch, on the very same patch, something else followed suit with her. There would be something added to the game, an item that would go through many different balance changes throughout the years. It was seen as a troll item at first. It was never really being built by any supports. It would go through buff after buff after buff until finally it was broken. Many players who played back in Season 4 would never predict that this single change, this single item, this one little lamp would change the scope. Ardent upon its release was not good at all. Most supports back then never built it, because typical support item builds back then were Sightstone, when you still had to build one, then completing the support item, such as Face at the Mountain, and then, if you had the gold, you would either build Locket, Athene's, Mikhail's, or honestly just tank stuff, such as a Randuin's or a Banshee's Veil. They tried for several seasons to make the item good, but to no luck. For supports, they really needed Sightstone. Even though the item wasn't that expensive, it was not just core, but a guarantee. This was mostly a gold tax that didn't allow supports to reach full items very often because of the sync that was required. On top of that, you could also upgrade your trinket at level 9 for 250 gold, which was also a guarantee that supports would do, adding more things to the list of what they would have to buy. Because of these two things that were a must purchase, building situational support items, which Ardent Sensor was never going to happen.
So, when most people see the new item, Ardent Sensor, they don't really focus on the stats that Ardent Sensor gives. Gives some ability power, some mana regen, some cooldown reduction. Rather, they don't see what Ardent Sensor should have to be a good support item. But the main problem with this item is that it's very expensive for a passive that is kind of lacking when you compare it to other things in the game.
Supports were only able to buy the single most OP support items in the game, which were things like Locket. But on patch 5.22, Riot would remove those upgraded trinkets, adding 250 gold back into the pockets of the support's budget. On the same patch, they also added Sightstone to the build path of the support items, allowing for an extra item slot assuming the support got the 6 items. So if you couple the changes to the wards with all of the Ardent Sensor buffs, which there were a lot of, you start to understand what happened here. On patch 4.12, the item was buffed only a month after its release, increasing the AP. On patch 5.10, it gave it a simple buff that changed around a couple of things. On patch 6.13, it was given a massive buff, helping out in many different ways. On patch 6.22, this buff added the healing effect to the item, giving it an entirely new OP mechanic. And after all of these changes, we finally approached the tipping point for Ardent Sensor. The real story on why Ardent became so broken starts at the very beginning of Season 7, on patch 7.2. Being so powerful, and of course, so visual. When used well, it could completely change the course of a game. Obviously, there are levels to things, and Redemption definitely needed a nerf and shouldn't have been so strong. But Riot's crucial mistake would eventually come to fruition, which was on that patch. This was one of the biggest mistakes in their history, and I believe is one of their biggest flaws when it comes to balancing, because Ardent Censor was extremely overcorrected. On the same patch, Redemption was nerfed and Ardent was buffed. By all means, this was an overcorrection. It didn't need a buff, due to the fact that nerfing Redemption in turn would mean that more people will buy, and most importantly try out Ardent Censor. It's a game about cost and trade-off, and when one option becomes worse, it means that another option becomes more valuable. After this buff, what didn't this item do? It empowered shields and heals, while also giving the support ability power and CDR. It gave movement speed, it gave your team attack speed, and healing, and on-hit damage, and mana regen. On this fateful patch, we all became slaves to the Ardent meta. The item rose very quickly to becoming the best support item in the game, far better than any other option. Sound familiar? It also just wasn't the best support item in the game, but quite literally one of the best items in the history of League. The breakdown of the gold value that this item brought for your team was absolutely nuts. Lulu, Janna, Sona, and Soraka were the clear benefactors here, with Lulu and Janna flying high above every other champion in the game. There were nightmare tales at the time, with Janna topping the win rate charts, sometimes nearly 60%. One thing to keep in mind is that since those days, Janna and Lulu have also been directly nerfed and changed to make their shields less oppressive. You're not just talking about giving the current Janna and Lulu the old Ardent, it's also the old Janna and old Lulu. On top of that, there was an ADC trend at the time that made the strategy even more effective, which was the Relic Shield strategy. On 7.9, Riot wanted to introduce something new to the support class, something to make them want to be more active and achieve something meaningful. This came with a new effect called quests. Quests were just what the support had to do in order to get their wards, and when reaching a certain amount of gold earned from the quest, your support item gets upgraded and gives you the wards. For the Spell Thief line, your spells and basic attacks started dealing a little bit more damage and gave you a mini Phase Rush or Storm Raider Surge, allowing mage supports to actually kite around and gain movement speed. For the Relic line, it was a real doozy. It gave a permanent shield that regenerated out of combat. This meant that building it basically gave the ADC a permanent Bloodthirster shield. ADC started taking this so assassins couldn't kill them as easily. The item also gave you a little bit of health, and the best part is that it funneled more gold into the support, since the Relic Shield procs shared gold with them, so the support could also get their Ardent Censor even faster. The laning phase down bottom lane with the constant heals and shields from the relics, sometimes even double relic shields, became so bad that both the bottom laners just quit trying to lane, and the support said, you know what, I only care about Ardent, and it was meta for the supports to take gold generation runes, not even worrying about health or defensive stats or AP. Who needs it? Just get Ardent.
Basically means you can just invest more gold into your support. Remember Janna last game had like an 800 gold lead on the enemy support? Well, it's going to be even more significant when you're having all this investment, and the barrier heal is just to give even more peel for the Cogmo.
Trying to be objective about it, obviously the bottom laners felt so powerful during this meta. I'm not really an ADC player or an ADC main, but I know that a lot of ADCs and a lot of supports really like this meta, for obvious reasons. ADCs such as Xayah, Tristana, Varus, and Kog'Maw were the clear above the rest cut caliber S-tier ADCs that could hyper carry with their support every single game, and the game was kind of brought to a 2v5 perspective. Which bot lane could outperform the others? Ardent supports and shielding supports became so valuable and easy to climb with, and they were easily one of the most important players on the team, even if it was by all means very unfair. For more than a month leading up to Worlds, the Ardent Censor meta was at full force. It definitely wasn't some secret or up-and-coming strategy going into Worlds. Plenty upon plenty of players were constantly complaining about the meta and the item. It was clearly the meta, and that's what I want you to understand. Forum post after Reddit post